Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing.
First trim hearing on Wednesday, September 6th, 2023, to order. Good evening. Welcome to the Juvenile Welfare Board's first of two public hearings for the consideration and adoption of the FY24 millage rate and budget. The public hearing is being held in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statute. I will ask Donna Carrero to proceed with the proposed FY24 tentative millage rate portion of her presentation. Diana?
Oh, that's right, I have it. Let's see, all right. Forward. Okay. Thank you. So to walk through the timeline, on August 21st, this hearing was noticed and the trim notices mailed out to all property owners. And on September 1st, the tentative budget was posted on the JWB website in compliance with Florida statutes in preparation for tonight's public hearing. On September 17th, the trim ads noticing the second public hearing will be in the Tampa Bay Times for the hearing on the 20th, where the board will adopt the final fiscal year 24 millage rate and budget, and then our new fiscal year begins on October 1st. So this next slide shows our millage rate over the past 5 years and shows that using an estimated average home taxable value of $234,522, the recommended millage rate of 0.8250 would cost the average homeowner $193 for the year. I also wanted to point out that the reduced millage rate of 0.8508 that was adopted for fiscal year 23 was the first time in a decade that it had been changed from 0.8981, and the further reduced rate of 0.8250 proposed for fiscal year 24 is only the second time in 35 years that the millage rate will be reduced for 2 consecutive years. Through these 2 millage rate reductions, the average single-family homeowner will realize a savings of $18 in 2024. This slide shows both our ad valorem revenue in the solid portion of the bars and our fund balance in the shaded portion on top for both the past 5 years and what we're forecasting for the next 5 years with fiscal year 24 in blue. As you can see, historically, fund balance has grown in large part as a result of our cost reimbursement programs, which were impacted by COVID, not being able to fully utilize their allocations as they faced workforce challenges. But beginning in fiscal year 24, we anticipate being able to begin spending down the excess fund balance, ultimately reaching a pre-pandemic level projected lapse percentage of 10% by fiscal year 28, which would reduce the beginning fund balance to $44.9 million. In this next slide, we've used 2007 as the base year, which is the last time we had the 2 consecutive years of millage rate reductions just prior to the recession. And it shows that when you account for the impact of inflation, the upward trend line that you saw on the previous slide of ad valorem revenue increasing every year is replaced with ad valorem revenue in fiscal year 24 that actually has less spending power than what it did in fiscal year 20. So for the fiscal year 2024, property values came in at $123.9 billion, which was an 11.76% increase over the prior year, which ultimately led to the board proposing the reduced tentative millage rate of 0.8250. And this millage rate does require a 2/3 vote or 8 affirmative votes of the board. And although this is a 3.03% reduction from our current millage rate of 0.8508, in accordance with Florida statute, this slide notes that this is a 7.45% increase over the rolled back rate. And the proposed millage rate of 0.8250 will yield a $7.6 million increase in ad valorem revenue to $99.1 million. The primary purposes for the increase in millage rate over the rolled back rate are to support personnel and operating expenditures that are driven by inflationary factors and the strategic priorities of the board, specifically to fund cost of living adjustments of our current programs in order to maintain service levels and program quality, increases for workforce stabilization efforts to help our funded programs to be able to hire and retain staff, the annualized portion of the 11 new strategically aligned programs that the board awarded in fiscal year 23, and $3.36 million for the implementation of other strategic investments such as the scaling up of the Turbo Babies campaign, father engagement, and the Children's Mental Health Initiative. At that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. This is the public comment and question portion of the hearing on the tentative millage rate for fiscal year 2024. Do we have any public comments or questions? Being there are no public comments or questions, we'd like to hear from the board. Do any of the members of the board have any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It just is a matter of explaining when the terms rollback rate, are you talking about a rate there that it levels out where you would have no increase at that particular millage rate? In other words, we would not increase, we'd manage where we're at right now. Is that what's referred to with rollback?
Yes.
And so that's kind of like the indicator. We look at how much above we are or below we are
Yes.
to where we'd plateau out. Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
I do have a question, since I'm the newbie here. The millage rate at this level, have we seen, I don't see in the history on where it's been at this rate before. Has it been?
It's actually been higher. Oops.
Yeah, it was definitely higher in I just don't have any history past 18, that's why I was asking.
Gotcha.
For 10 years, it was at the 0.8981, and then last year we reduced it, and then this year we're reducing it again.
Okay,
And then before that, for a long period of time, it was at the same rate that it was
got
prior
it.
to
So we're
then.
giving a significant break from what has been true for a whole decade.
In the millage rate, yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly the information I was looking for. Thank you.
And just as someone who's been here for, I guess, 12, 13 years now, it's never been at this exact rate. So it's always been between 8 and 8.9, and it's really been at 8.89 for the vast majority of the time that we've been here. So there hasn't been any change at all. But before that, I can't remember if it was 0.82 or 0.79. It was some point in the early 2000s, it was in the 0.7s, but it was like 0.79. But it's never been 0.85.
Early, because in '08, we also had an increase due to the recession.
Right.
That gives a lot of relevance to this decrease. Thank
Right,
you.
and it's been at this rate for all those years, and now you guys decided to.
From 1997 to 2006, it was 0.8117. So we had that for quite a long time until we had the recession, and then it settled out at 8.981.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Great, okay. Does any board member have any other recommendations or changes to the millage rate this time? The board must now consider the resolution to set the tentative millage rate. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY24 tentative millage rate.
Resolution 24.01, a resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative levying of ad valorem taxes for Pinellas County for fiscal year 2024, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 6, 2023, adopted fiscal year tentative millage rate following a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. And whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation within Pinellas County has been certified by the county property appraiser to the Juvenile Welfare Board as $123,868,348,903. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County that the fiscal year 24 operating millage rate is 0.8250 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of 0.7678 mils by 7.45%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Okay. So now I'll call for a motion and a second to adopt the FY24 tentative millage rate. I will ask Julia to call each board member for their vote. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Julia, will you call for a vote?
Okay, Mr. Brian Knox,
Yes.
The Honorable Bruce Bartlett,
Yes.
Miss Kristen Nage,
Yes.
Superintendent Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
Chief James Milliken,
Yes.
the Judge Patrice Moore,
Yes.
and Miss Melissa Rutland.
Yes.
From what I hear, we had a unanimous vote, yes. So the motion is approved. Now I'll ask Diana to proceed with the proposed FY24 tentative budget portion of her presentation.
Maybe there's just a delay. Oh, there we go. Oop. Yes, thank you. Okay, so to summarize the fiscal year 24 tentative budget that's included in your packets, ad valorem revenue is increasing by 7.6 million, and we're budgeting an increase in interest revenue of 2.2 million, bringing it up to 2.5 million for fiscal year 24, and that brings the total revenue to 101.7 million. As for the program expenditures, we're looking at a total of 106 million, which is an increase of 11.7 million over the prior year for much of what I presented in the earlier slides, and it shows the budget for future programming is reduced to 217,854 as we begin to wind down our current strategic plan that concludes in fiscal year 25. And staff are focusing more on the implementation of the new programs that have been awarded versus funding additional new programs in fiscal year 24. The 2.9 million that's budgeted for the RFA for capital and technology covers what you awarded at the board meeting earlier today, and contingency is reduced by 250,000 to 500,000. This slide shows how the program funding is distributed, and for fiscal year 24, for the first time, behavioral health has now replaced out-of-school time as our area of greatest investment, just over 21 million, and that's due in large part to 5 of the 11 new strategically aligned programs that were awarded fell into this category. And then you can also see how funding is distributed across the other areas in order of greatest to least investment. As for the administrative expenditures, we have a total budget of 11.5 million, which is an increase of 383,000 over the prior year, and it includes the addition of 4 new full-time equivalent positions. The board's target admin rate is to not exceed 10%. And for fiscal year 24, the admin rate actually decreases by 0.36% to 7.3, which is well within target. In relation to our fund balance, the board's policy is that fund balances that are anticipated at the end of a fiscal year will be budgeted as the beginning fund balance for the upcoming fiscal year. So at this time, the anticipated beginning fund balance is 56 million, which is a 2.6 million increase over the prior year. And JWB does use the beginning fund balance as part of the total resources available, in addition to the current year revenue to fund the annual budget. So the FY24 budget proposes to spend down excess fund balance, which at this time currently exceeds the board's target of 25% by utilizing 21.3 million of the fund balance. And that concludes the presentation, and I'll turn it back over to the chair.
This is the public comment and question portion of the hearing on the tentative budget for fiscal year 2024. Hearing no comments, I would like to ask the board if there are any comments. Any board member have any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank the staff for working with us. Superintendent Hendrick said something that I will never, ever forget, and he said, you got to spend this year's money on this year's kids. And one of those things that, to me, that just totally encapsulates what I'd like to see us accomplish with this budget. And God willing, with the pandemic and everything else we've had to go through, that we're going to be in a position, and our providers are going to be in a position to do that. So I thank you guys for your dedication, and I feel terribly that our fund balance grew in large part due to lapse through that period of time, because there were kids that needed that money. So I want to make sure that we do everything we possibly can as a board to give you guys all the resources you need and give our providers the resources they need to make sure we're spending this money in what it's intended for. So thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, the board must now consider the resolution to set the tentative budget. I will ask Beth to read the proposed resolution regarding the FY24 tentative budget.
Resolution fiscal year 24-02. A resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2024, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 6, 2023, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065, and whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County set forth the appropriations and revenue estimate for the budget for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $158,024,611. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County that the fiscal year 2024 tentative budget be adopted. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Thank you, Beth. I call for a motion and a second to adopt the FY24 tentative budget resolution.
Move approval.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. I'll now ask Julia to call on each board member for their vote.
Mr. Brian Augst,
Aye.
the Honorable Bruce Bartlett,
Yes.
Miss Kristen Nage,
Yes.
Superintendent Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Mr. Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
Chief James Milligan,
Yes.
the Honorable Judge Patrice Moore,
Yes.
Miss Melissa Rutland.
Yes.
Seeing we have a unanimous vote to proceed, the motion is approved. With that, unless the board members have any further comments, this concludes the first public hearing for the 2024 millage and budget. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion is passed. Thank you, everyone. The meeting's adjourned.